Hey folks, John Kelly. Welcome back to the Law Enforcement Life Coach Sometimes Heroes Need Help podcast. This podcast is being brought to you by On Target Claims, where their motto is on target from setback to settlement. Now listen, a little background. I've worked with these guys on the job, on the street for over 25 years, man, and they have always done the right thing and have always had my back. Now, in this second chapter, let them have your back. Right? You wouldn't go to court without an attorney. Why would you go up against an insurance company without representation, right? They represent you, the policyholder, when you go up against an insurance company submitting a claim. And I can tell you this, right? From beginning to end, they're going to be with you during the entire process. They're going to properly document that claim with the latest technology. And then when it comes time to getting things fixed, they've got a complete stable of vendors that are certified that are going to get it done right the first time. They also offer a pre-loss planning and policy review. So you know exactly what you're covered for, right? Make sure that you're adequately covered. The time to find out that you're not isn't after that horrific event. Okay? So give my friends a call at On Target Claims, 561-208-1775, or go to their website, ontargetclaims.com. They cover the entire state of Florida, offices in Fort Lauderdale and Tampa, and tell them John sent you. And now, let's get to the episode. Hey folks, John Kelly. Welcome back to the Law Enforcement Life Coach Sometimes Heroes Need Help podcast. Sitting down with a friend, man. Chad Bruckner. When I first started in this space, Chad was gracious enough to have me on his podcast, the Breaking Bad show, if I remember correctly. Him and Ryan had me on, and they were like the first guys to put me out there. And he has been doing that ever since. And he's just a solid dude, man. A veteran law enforcement professional. And he has made a life of service in the first, second, and third chapter. And he wrote a book, The Holy Trinity of Successful and Healthy Police Organizations, Improving Leadership, Culture, and Wellness. And we are going to get into it today. It's really a pleasure. And man, every time I talk to you, value is immediately added to my life, man. So it is great to see you, and thank you for being here, man.
John, brother, thank you for that, man. You come on these podcasts and people give you intros, and each time you sit there and you kind of smile and you listen, and you just think, are they talking about me? And then it's yeah, man, I'm listening to what you're saying. It's like we both started this journey, our post law enforcement career, to where we are today, and we're different people. We're different men than when we started, and I think that's pretty neat, man. So
yeah, I think. Who would have known, Chad, that the second chapter, third for you, would be as rewarding and fulfilling? I didn't see it coming, man. I didn't see it coming, because I thought the profession was, that was me giving. And I think the second chapter, man, it redefines what giving back means.
Yeah. Plus, I mean, you're right. Like service, we attach service to those professions because it's easy to define, right? Service, you're providing service, you're putting your life on the line for somebody else. That's easy to define. And you think you're not going to get it in business. And on top of that, then you have the adrenaline hit and just working in the professions. You worked for over 2 decades, between the military and law enforcement, same for me. And you don't get you think you're not going to get those anywhere else. And then you come in entrepreneurship and business, and you're doing, speaking and writing a book like you're doing as well. And you start to have these interactions with humans that you would have never had anywhere else. And you say to yourself, whoa, okay, there's something to this. I don't know where this is going to go. I don't know where this is leading, but I got to keep going because chapter 3 looks pretty damn nice.
Yeah, right, man. And that's exciting. I think, I put it this way, like, in that law enforcement chapter, we were serving the community. I really wasn't, by default, we were serving each other, but our focus was split, right? Our focus was split. And this chapter, bro, fuck the community. I am, I just like you. I am with our brothers and sisters, man. How do we make this thing of ours, right? How do we make it grow? How do we add value? They are the priority. And we can be selfish like that, man.
Yeah. We're basically filling the gap of what leaders on the job should be doing. That's what we're doing, unfortunately. And well, I say unfortunately, I say fortunately. Let's just make it positive. So, we're filling that gap that where if you had really mindful, educated, trauma informed leaders on the job, more of them, you would have so much of this wellness and culture issue really would be tampered down. So guys like us, and there's so many of us out there with this awareness now and this understanding and the lived experience we've been through, we're filling that gap. Hey, your chief's not going to put this training on for you. Okay. Your captain's not going to coach and mentor you. Okay. You're like, there are guys and girls like us out there now who can fill that gap. If I had a coach when I was on the job, I'd probably still be on the job, John, but that's great. Like we get to fill that gap now and save other cops who maybe are in year 12, 13, 14, or are hitting a downturn, kind of like I went through. And you're thinking maybe the best days are behind me. No, they're not. Right. Maybe you need a coach, you need to change your perspective or something, but maybe the best days are still right in front of you. You just can't see it. And that's where we fill that gap. It's amazing.
I like how, you put that, really, man, our best days are ahead of us. They really are. Hey, listen, they have to be.
They have to be.
They have to be, bro. They have to. And listen, before we get too far ahead of ourselves, right? Because listen, this is you and me having a conversation. The listener may not know all of your history. And you know me, bro. I don't like getting into the minutia of, but let's frame this a little bit. How you got to where you're at, how you got to author this amazing book. Because I think that will help add some perspective for the listener. Like, this is a guy who knows who's the real deal, who knows what it's like to serve and to believe in something, greater than himself. Right. So let's start back. I'd love to start back with your, briefly your time in the military, your transition into law enforcement, and then that will give us, I think, some really good framework to talk about your book and just the state of the union in general.
Yeah, that's a state of the union. I like that. So I went in the Army at 17. I enlisted in the Army infantry. I was not a good student growing up in high school. I'm the oldest of three kids in my family. So kind of was the first one for my parents to learn like what happens after high school. Oh, they got to go college or do something. And I did not position myself well. I was just not a good student. I was more distracted by girls and sports. So I went in the Army at 17. And one of the things I write about in the book, and I think it's interesting to talk about for this conversation, is I went in the Army at 17, not knowing who I am yet as a man. I had no identity yet as a man.
Sure.
Who does at 17? But the Army, what they're so good in the military in general is building people up, building leaders up, developing men and women to do hard things. And I remember walking around in boot camp at 17, we're marching and drilling, and the drill sergeant said, "What makes the grass grow?" And it's blood, drill sergeant. I mean, everything is conditioned to build a man and woman. I was all male at the time in the infantry. To build a male to kill or capture the enemy. That was our mission statement in the infantry, Army infantry, to kill or capture the enemy, and use tactics and training and discipline and all of it and teamwork to make that happen. Right. So it was an amazing process of building me up, and I was really good at that. It was the first time in my life. I remember turning 18 in boot camp, feeling this overwhelming sense of confidence. For the first time in my life, I put on 20 pounds or 25 pounds in 4 months in boot camp. And just feeling this overwhelming sense of confidence for the first time, because I remember going home at 18, now hanging out with my peers and on leave, and like, wow, like I'm in a different spot.
What a transformation, man.
Yeah. Like they're talking about getting drunk, and they're just like scratching the surface of what it means to be an adult. And I feel like I was 25 when I just turned 18,
right?
Just by proxy of the military training. I mean, they build you up to feel like you can do that, to feel like you can, right. I can run up that mountain against 100 enemy, and I will get that flag. I will take all 100 guys out. And like, you have to believe you can do that. And if you don't believe you can do it, you won't be successful in those hard missions. So
they do a great job of instilling that confidence, don't they?
Yeah. So that took me in the Army. Originally, I signed up for 4 years. This is pre 9/11. So I think the contracts are still the same. They're actually 8-year contracts, but I only signed up for 4 years of active duty. That second 4 years on the back end, is called inactive ready reserve, IRR. It was always kind of a part of military contracts, but if you're not in wartime, if you're in peacetime, which this country doesn't know peacetime anymore, but in the 90s, in the mid to late 90s, like there was a 8-9 year period of no conflict. That 4 years of inactive ready reserve, that was kind of just, you chalk it up and you throw it out and you pretend it doesn't exist. So you do your 4 years and you go home. And in the back of your mind, in that 4 year period of that IRR time, the government could call you back up if they need you. So I went into 98, no problem. Well, 9/11 happened 3 years into my 4 year deal. So when it was 02 and it was time to get out of active duty, this 4 years of IRR time now that was just kind of ghost time, so to speak. Now we had Iraq looming.
It's real time now, brother.
Yeah, it's real time. So we just invaded Afghanistan. Iraq's on the horizon. Everybody kind of knew that was coming. So then I re-enlisted to go in the National Guard. So back home in PA, I didn't want to lose my time in service, time in rank. So I re-enlisted in the National Guard in PA. I came home I was at Fort Lewis, Washington, where I got out. And I drilled every week, 1 week in a month for probably 5 or 6 months. It wasn't even that long. I ended up moving out to Washington State and drilled there for a couple months, came back to PA because I was 23, still trying to figure myself out and still missing the military and still trying to figure out where I fit.
Right.
Less than a year later of doing that, kind of bouncing around between Washington and Pennsylvania, my unit in Pennsylvania got called up. The neat thing about that was got called up to serve in Iraq. The neat thing about that was and I don't say neat, but interesting thing is my unit at Fort Lewis was just invaded. They were in the first invasion of Iraq. I was only out 6 months. And I'm watching the invasion happen in Iraq with my old unit. And I'm 6 months out. So like all my buddies are still there. And I'm watching them on TV, cross the berm, go and storm Baghdad, and I'm sitting at home in Pennsylvania, just 6 months removed from being at Fort Lewis, Washington, as a team leader, a sergeant in that unit. And I felt so useless at 22 years old, John. At 22, I would sit in my parents' house, drinking whiskey, feeling like absolute, like useless, no job, living in my parents' house, because my buddies, in my mind, I was not fulfilling my service. So when my unit got called up 8 months later, my Pennsylvania National Guard unit got called up 8 months later. I mean, I celebrated like I was going to war and do my duty, and thank God for making me useful and purposeful and making me feel like I am where I need to go. It's just an interesting mindset to be in. So I ended up, we went to Iraq, did a tour in Iraq, came back. And then as soon as I got back, it ended up being like 6 months and I got out. That 8 years just ended up being from 98 to 06.
Wow.
So yeah, ended up doing a tour in Iraq, led a bunch of combat missions, almost got blown up by an IED, blew up right near our truck. I mean, literally like less than a second difference, we would not be having this conversation. All 5 of us were in that vehicle. So yeah, just looking back in my early 40s now, I'm thinking about all these moments or events. You're like, wow, this happened to be different. Or this happened to be different. Or this happened.
Amazing how a plus or minus a second or two impacts the trajectory of our lives.
Yeah. And that gives me a lot of gratitude. I mean, everyone has different experiences about kind of near death situations, but it gives me a lot of gratitude. I talk about my buddy Fernando, who I wear on my wristband, but he was was killed in Iraq. And, and I say this not to curry sympathy or anything like that, but when he was killed, he was just a better version of a man than I was. I'm not saying that long term it wouldn't be that way. I'm not saying I wasn't a good man either. I'm just saying
this is somebody that you really respected, man.
Oh man, he was just a really
I'll
good
go
person.
so far as to say idolized. Like he was that guy, man.
Yeah, he was just a really good person. I mean, I remember being 20 at 20 years old. He was 22. He's 2 years older than me. He would say to the buddies in the army, in the infantry, active duty, like all male, like very like male culture, alpha male culture. And he'd be like, "I love you, buddy. Love you, brother." Like he would just talk like that, man. And nobody talked that way. And I got to be around him for 18 months at such a critical time when I got promoted to sergeant, and he was, we got promoted together, but he was just a cut different. He was just a little bit more mature than everybody, a lot more mature. And so I felt like I was giving this, I mean, I really feel like now looking back on it, God gave me this ability in this all male unit. That's, a lot of good leaders, but he gave me this empathetic, well-rounded leader to partner with, to be a buddy with, for 18 months. And then a couple years later, when he was killed, it was just this, yeah, I mean, it awakened in me this desire, not knowing how to do it, but this desire to live this. And it was almost subconscious because I remember thinking about it, but it was
Right.
like, wow, I can't believe he's dead and I'm alive. Holy, well, I guess it's called
Yeah.
survivor's guilt. And there was a period of time. It just took me time to get over the fact that I had this opportunity to live a life. I was just getting married at that time. I
Right.
missed his funeral. So anyway, I know we're getting in the weeds, but
No,
uh,
but I think it's just it highlights. See, this is my takeaway from that is like maybe he didn't know the role that he played in your life. You acknowledge the role he played in your life,
yeah,
and I think that's you don't know what you consider as just the way you are, how you interact with people. The
yeah,
takeaway, everybody takes away something different, and when you don't know the impact you're having on the people around you, and that's why it's so important, man. Um, to be that leader that cares, to be
mhm.
that to live a life that's respected and admired by your peers, right? Because whether you know it or not, you're setting the standard, you're setting the tone, you're setting the example for all of us to follow or not,
You're right,
or
right. Or
not,
not.
right? Like
Yeah.
that's my takeaway from hearing that story is that he maybe had some what we would consider now emotional intelligence, right? The buzzword. He was displaying that before it was a thing. Like
Oh yeah, big
you
time.
care about your people, right? You care about them
Uh,
deeply.
and he cared so much that the influence I saw from his team, from his soldiers, it was another example of I was around a lot of yellers, just more yellers than not.
I love people that yell, man. Because the minute you raise your voice, I block out everything that you're saying,
Yeah.
man.
And it can be effective, like you can have its moments, you pick your time, be strategic about it. If you're not a yeller, and then
Yeah.
you find out some strategic moments to yell in a very
Right,
critical moment, you capture people's attention. Whoa, why is
right.
he yelling? Oh, he doesn't do that normally. Okay, I need to listen and pay attention.
Sure, no
But
doubt.
yellers who just yell when they get mad, you just tune them out. And to be around a guy who actually wanted to know about your family. If you said you were having a bad day, he would say, "What's going on?" He would ask questions. I mean, I just and I grew up with my dad who was like that, but I went in the army and for 2, 3 years in my first 2, 3 years in the army, it was an indoctrination. It was most people don't care about your emotions. Most people don't care about your feelings. Most people don't really care, what your end game is going to be or where your outcomes are going to be. They say they care, but
Right,
you have
right.
to learn that. You people like you were saying this about your daughter and the lessons that our kids need to learn, but like you have to experience it to learn it. Nobody can tell you that. You can say, "Hey, I know that'll happen." But when somebody hurts you or betrays you or tells you, I'm going to make sure you get this or I'm going to help you get this, and then you find out they never had any intention to help you, and that's okay because that's not their job to help you all the way to the end. All these lessons of life you just have to
Sure.
learn about it, accountability and all those things. So when I met Fernando, it was just like this guy who was a sergeant. He's a leader. I watched people smile. I watched grown men want to be around him.
Right.
I watched grown men pick him to be on their team. Like he was just an affable, positive guy that people wanted to be around. And it's an example. If we can all be a little bit more like that, that's
Yeah.
how we get the influence. That's how people around us start to do the things we ask them to do because they don't want to let us down. They recognize that we're just good people trying to make good things in the world.
Establishing a relationship, man.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Building trust. Yeah.
Yeah, awesome. And so you you had your time in Iraq. Um, you got home after your now it was like almost your full 8 years, your full 8 year commitment. And looking for prospects was law enforcement like an automatic go to, or how did that come
No,
about,
I
Chad?
never wanted. I never wanted to be a cop. That's the irony of this. I'm gonna tell you this story, and I hope I'll try to make it short here. When I was in Iraq, you're gonna like this story because it just speaks of what we're talking about. When I was in Iraq, I was 24, getting ready to turn 25. I went in at 17. Like I'm coming up on the end of this 8 year enlistment. I'm in theater, like I'm in a combat zone. Come and get ready to come home, and I know that it's over, and the next phase is here. And I don't know. I've been my whole adult life has been in the military. So in Iraq, I re-enlisted for 6 years of active duty, go back on active duty, make the
I
military
remember
career.
this story from the book, I believe.
Yeah,
Yes.
I
Yeah,
told
yeah.
this in the book. Yeah. And I still have the picture of my squad holding a big giant American flag behind me. I'm standing there, and the company commander's there swearing me. I think the battalion commander actually came down and swore me in. And
So you already did 8,
yep,
and
already did 8.
you're in Iraq, and you've got there's a plane ticket for you to go home, or you can re-enlist. You decide to re-enlist while you're in Iraq.
I was in Iraq, which, by the way, I don't recommend making.
Listen, there's a lot of people scratching their head right now going, dumbass. Oh.
My dad was number 1, man. I'm telling you.
Man.
So I did it that day. I went back to we call them the CHU. It's a Connex housing unit. Basically, we slept in Connex boxes in our shipping containers, in Iraq. And I loved it. It was great. And better than sleeping in the dirt. And
yeah, man.
And I went back to my CHU that night, and I was talking to another squad leader in our platoon, Dave, good guy. And he was a straight shooter, man. He cared about me as just a comrade, as a friend, also the same rank as me. So we just keep it real. And he kept it real. So I appreciate his guidance. And he said, man, what are you doing? Like, what are you doing? Like, of all the guys, you're the one, like, no. And I'm like, well, it's too late now. I already did it, And that's the other thing is, one thing when you're younger, I think a lot of people can relate. If you don't see the value in yourself that other people see in you, and not everybody can look in the mirror and see themselves for who they are. Not everybody can do that. I couldn't do that. I only now learning how to do that. So
that's a great point, man. It's
like Dave looked at me and he recognized that I was built for something more, but I didn't see that in myself.
Right.
And then I remember calling my dad, like, Dave planted this seed. We're sitting around, joking around as a couple guys, smoking cigarettes or whatever, talking. So then I went to the phone bank back in 2004. You needed to, call phone bank, and I call my dad, and I tell him what happened. Also hear the emotion in my dad's voice, somber, and he said,
that had to have been a gut punch for your dad, because he knows, man, that every day you're there is another day of potential that he's losing a son, right? I mean, let's just call it what it was, bro.
Yeah, my dad was on the news. We lost like 6 guys in August of 05. We lost like 6 guys in a short period of time. Many casualties. It was just a tough time. And the Humvees we were driving didn't have all the up armor. It was just it was in the earlier phase of the war. So supplies were low and resources were low. And I remember after the second event, and a couple days apart happened, they brought all the families to the armory. They had the division commander, brigade commander, whoever came down and kind of just talked to the families, provided some comfort. And the media was there. And I remember my dad, who's always a straight shooter, he's asking questions like, you coming down here, and I'm paraphrasing, but you coming down here and schmoozing us, like, that's not enough. What supplies or equipment are you giving them so they don't die as much or they don't get hurt as much?
Right. They got
that's all
protection.
I care about.
Right.
Yeah, my son's over there. Our sons are over there. Like, that's all the Fugazi talk. Yeah, that's save that for somewhere else. And but I remember that getting back to me in Iraq. I remember being in Iraq, and like the first sergeant saying, yo, your dad's back home starting shit. And I remember calling home, yelling at my dad, like, this is hard enough for me over here, and you got to start shit for me, and I put me in the target and the crosshairs over here. And just an interesting kind of a messy time. I love my dad. I have nothing but respect for my dad, because I'm a father now too. I wasn't a dad then. Like, I can't imagine I'd be doing this. He
was supporting you the only way he could, which was by trying to get you better equipment, and not let some military politician make light of what was going on.
Yeah, and I don't even think the unit was doing anything bad. They just were trying to do what they thought they could do. And my dad's like, hey, let me tell you what you could do. Get them all the equipment they need. My dad, like he had said, if I could get a Humvee, if I could get an AR, if I could get a vest, if I could get charter a boat and drive across the Atlantic, boat across the Atlantic, I'd fight there with you, but I can't. So I have to, make noise. And I get it as a dad now myself. I mean, that's a helpless feeling.
Makes sense.
Think,
of course,
you think every time, every day over there, it's just it's the worst going on. So anyway, I walk into work the next day, come back into the operations center, and the lieutenant says, hey, Bruck, you're not going to believe this, but battalion can't find your reenlistment paperwork. So we're going to reenlist. We're going to do this again. We're going to have the commander come down and do it again. I mean, I remember going, sir, no, thank you. He goes, what do you mean? And it just led to this argument. I mean, I think it was playful, but maybe not. Maybe,
Yeah, right.
my belief was a little playful, but I just reenlisted for 6 years of active duty time. I mean, that's gold. That's the highest you can reenlist for. Amount of years, 2, 4, 6. So, I mean, that's gold standard for the military. And I'm sure you would take that and put it in a safe, but in combat operations, organization's a little chaotic compared to being back in garrison. Yeah. And for whatever reason, they needed me to do it again. And I said, I'm not doing it again. So I went home a couple months later and got out. And
Took that advice of a few people.
yeah, I mean, it would have changed my whole life. Changed my whole life,
Right.
and I would have met my wife. Would have never been a cop. And the irony is about being a cop, I never wanted to be one. The town I grew up in, great town, great community, but just traffic focused, traffic heavy.
Yeah.
At that time growing up, it wasn't just a whole lot going on. And so my mom, when I was getting off active duty the first time, my mom was suggesting, why don't you be a police officer? And I'm like, Mom, I don't want to do that. So a couple of years she was suggesting that. My only perspective, I didn't know any cops, I didn't have any friends. So my only perspective was getting the couple speeding tickets I got at 16 or 17. I had great interactions with the cops, but that wasn't my idea of
right.
fun.
You didn't want to do that. Right.
Yeah. So when actually Iraq is a situation that changed. In Iraq, we were doing a lot of para law enforcement operations in the infantry. So when I went in before 9/11, it was all training in the woods. Now it went post 9/11 to urban environments. So you're learning how to fight in cities with civilians around you.
Room clearing.
Cops know how to do that much better than soldiers at that time because we were great at ambushes in the woods. And so being in Iraq and learning how to build informants with the residents in the city, learning how to move room to room and handing out toys and candies to the kids in the city, it just really reframed my perspective to say working with the Iraqi police and making some of those relationships, seeing what they went through. And yeah, it just really added that perspective is what I needed. So when I came back, it was kind of thinking about it a lot, but it really wasn't until I met my wife a couple months after I got back or 6 months after I got back that really changed everything. I knew I needed some direction and purpose. And so I was thinking about it and she was, giving me that final ammo to go pursue that.
That's nice. So she kind of supported that push in that direction.
Oh yeah. She's much more squared away than I am. So all the influence she provides, she just lives her life and it makes, and I'm forced to keep up.
Yeah, that's awesome. It's nice to have somebody like that in your life, brother.
It is. It is.
So you stay with your local PD, no?
Yeah. Not the exact town I grew up in, but it was 15 minutes. I mean, it's basically local to me. I played baseball. I made the all-star team as a kid and played baseball in the same town I was working out as a cop. So even to this day, I look back at it and think of like, how cool is that? I played ball on a field as a kid.
And like some sort of Hallmark movie or something, bro.
Yeah. And I actually, that's a game where I actually hit a double off the fence. Like I have such a great memory. And then there I was a cop patrolling it, training other cops, making arrests in the park or just patrolling it to keep it safe. Right. Like what a cool perspective and experience. But yeah, it was real close to my home.
That's awesome, man. And so you, without getting too far in the weeds with work, you had a good run and then you didn't.
Yeah. It was great. It was a good run. It was a great run. It was living life. It was the first, I got married. When I got hired as a cop, I was only married 5 months, had all 3 kids at the police department, got both college degrees at the police department. They paid for most of it. Became an expert in multiple disciplines. I mean, I just met some amazing people, did some amazing things, nothing but positive experiences to say about any of that or negative. Of course, when you work with humans and you have the propensity to run across people and deal with people, get in situations that creates conflict. And I think cops, we don't realize how broken we are as individuals, myself included. I was not the most healthy version of myself. So when, you're kind of mixing around, I'll call it like a painter, it's like Bob Ross. It's like, I'm going to take a little yellow from John, a little blue from Chad, a little, purple from Ryan. I'm going to mix it all together. Well, it's going to be a little messy. It's going to be, right. And in police work, especially, you have a lot of kind of people coming into it with fractured perspectives of what they think is right or what they believe is right. And sometimes it might be, and sometimes it might not be. And so I kind of ran into a situation where we went through a promotional exam. I didn't like the way it was administered. I thought it was a shady process. I wasn't the only one to think that. All of us who didn't pass thought that. And we filed a complaint with the community to see all the company, the third party vendor they brought in to see all their training records and all that. just making that noise, everything was respectful, just making that noise, making those requests, getting the borough officials involved. When you start to do those things, now in hindsight, I can understand. I thought I'd be celebrated for that, to be honest with you. That's how
Right.
naive I was. Yeah. Like, hey,
Right. Yeah.
I found something shady. I'm bringing it to the attention of stakeholders, so that just shows you at that time, which was 5 years ago, that I was,
Chad,
still
Chad,
had a
Chad,
lot to
Chad,
learn.
Chad, 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 Chad. Dude, I know, right? Yeah, it's funny. You don't know what you don't know.
Mhm. So anyway, I call that out. My partner and I ended up getting reassigned from detectives back to patrol. I called it a demotion because when I was promoted to detective, they congratulated me on your promotion to detective. So
Wait a
you don't
minute. It's not a demotion now because, yeah, right. Okay. It was a
exactly, yeah.
promotion, but leaving it's not a demotion.
Yeah, it's a reassignment and all that. So yeah, it doesn't. You
Right.
don't get to own. You got to own it. So as a leader, if you're going to make decisions, my belief is you got to own it both one way or another. So I was promoted to detective for good cause, and I was demoted from detectives because I got involved in a situation where I spoke up against what I believe to be corruption. So
Right.
yeah, I mean that's the rub of it. That's the truth. But you know what, man, I would not change any of it. I'll be honest with you. I know people say that and they're like, oh, I wouldn't change it because it sounds like idealistic, but the lessons and the wisdom that I learned from it, I just would not have been able to get any other way. The school of
Right.
hard knocks, growing up, and there's people that grew up really in hard times, and I had some of that as a kid, but yeah, you get more of that as an adult, and you realize like a lot of those experiences shape who you are, and if you take some of those away, then you take some of the good parts away too. So yeah, man, that reassignment back to patrol tore my heart open. I'll be honest, it put a
Oh,
hole in my heart.
and you know what happens, man? You don't have that the 2020 hindsight, man. You don't know.
Exactly.
You
Yeah.
actually think it's all this shit's legit. You think it's for real. You think it matters, right? Like
Oh, in the middle of it, it was the worst thing in
right.
the world.
It's
Yeah, it was
the
brutal.
worst thing in the world that's ever
Mhm.
happened. And you attach shame that should never be attached to it, you know, well,
Yeah.
people are gonna think less of me. I mean, that starts this all that negative self-doubt
Oh yeah.
uh and it's unfortunate because there's nobody there at that time to go, knock it the fuck off. It's there's nobody there to shake you and
And I
say,
think that's the whole culture is so fractured like that. I don't even think, and that's why we're looking for reasons to blame or people to blame. I don't think it's that easy. I think when you believe that this is the right way to do things, even if it's dead wrong, in your heart of hearts, you believe that how we do things here is the right way to do things. How can I tell you you're wrong? You believe it's right. You believe the
right,
way we treat each other is right. You maybe you've been thinking there's other ways. Maybe you thought there's better ways. Maybe you've heard of other ways. But if you never tried it, you never immersed yourself in it. This is just business, man. This is the way we do
right.
things. You go along to get along,
It's the
or
way
you get
we've
out.
always done it.
Yeah, I mean, and it takes those like really changed thought leaders who are so few and far, but when they're out there, we have to invest everything into them and pour everything into them because they are really the ones that are transcending and changing the culture, not on day one, but they're doing it and affecting other leaders around them,
Right,
but through their consistent efforts. And our society, man, we'd love to almost double down on those guys or girls. We'd like to not build them up for whatever
right.
reason, I guess, because they stand apart too much.
I I love there were so many different that's what just to draw in a little bit about the book. Um so I've read a lot of books on leadership, right? Um but yours is different. See, you provide the how. Like I know the why, man. I know the why. It's like we've been at conferences and somebody will have a cool story. Everybody's got a cool story, man. Um, I'm sick of cool stories, bro. Give me skill sets. Give me something that I can implement immediately to make me better. I have to be better for listening to you. Like that's the contract, man. And I'm sure the guy that killed Osama bin Laden's got a cool story. How does me
How's
hearing
that
that
help you?
story help me
Right,
grow
right.
as a leader, as a man, as a father, as a husband? It doesn't.
It
So
doesn't. Yeah.
keep your cool story put somebody in front of me that's going to add value to my life. And so what I love about the book is there's some stories, but there's the why, but more importantly, there is the how you implement being this kind of leader. What are the different kinds of leaders? What's the blend that you should kind of hope to achieve based on your makeup and your, and your personality? And so I like that you took the time to actually like provide a guide for the reader. If you want to be a leader that, connects with his troops, these are the things that you need to do. And you spell out the tasks that you don't leave it to my imagination. You say, listen, based on a bunch of different leadership characteristics and research and how adults learn, and this is how you become an effective leader. And you put all that in these pages, man. And I thought that was really, really well done. Again, and the book is the holy trinity of successful and healthy police organizations, improving leadership, culture, and wellness. It's on Amazon. You can buy it directly from Chad if you want. Get a signed copy like I did. Real cool. But again, I love the fact that you put in there the things to implement, the things to actually do, the assessments. If you're in the leadership position and you're looking to bring somebody on, there's what kind of questions to ask. What are the things that you want to look for in the next leader? We get consumed with titles. No, that means nothing. It means nothing. Let's look at somebody's experience. How about their life experience? What do they bring, that's not measured? Oh, you didn't go to the NA. Should that be a disqualifier because you didn't go to the National Academy? What if, well, you've only had an agency of 50 people. And, we're looking for somebody. Well, how did that agency of 50 people run? Was he an effective leader? Were the people, do they have a high turnover rate? Do they have problem with recruiting and retention? No. Well, maybe if he's doing something right for 50-man agency, maybe he can do something right for a 200-man agent or a 2,000-man. I mean, it's the same principles, right? And
nobody wants to take a risk anymore.
No.
Many organizations talk themselves out of the best hires because it's a little messy, or they don't have this, or they don't have that. Even though that could be the best thing for the organization, we talk ourselves out of it because, they don't have this, or they don't have that. But
yeah, man, checking boxes, man. Checking boxes will get you nowhere fast. And so I love that you actually, after each chapter, you have a call to action. Like, hey, this is the information. Now, this is what I want you to do with it. And I have a way. I always, because I have a simple mind, I sum your book up like the way I like to sum up a lot of things, right? So it's easily digestible. Care more about your people than you do yourself. Not forgetting the importance of self-care, right? But if you do that, if that's the lens that you go to work with, then every interaction is meaningful, right? And I think that's the way we turn this around.
That might be the greatest summary. I mean, literally, it's. I never thought about that.
I am John Kelly. I am the law enforcement life coach, brother.
Yeah, I mean, dude, that's incredible.
I don't know if you've heard, but I'm kind of a big deal.
You are a big deal.
Anchorman.
If you don't have to read the book.
You gotta quote Anchorman every now and then. But yeah.
You hurt me though, because now nobody has to read the book because you just captivated.
You got to get the book. The book I really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed some books.
But you're right, man.
I pick up and I go, oh Jesus, I got to read this book. I was just like, I can't wait to read this book. And so when we talk, I always come up against this wall when I talk to authors that write about leadership. And I think you do a good job of setting the framework for the individual to fill the void.
Mm,
Like
that
in an
makes
idea,
sense. Yeah.
an ideal world, that it would be great to have leaders that, and there are a lot of great leaders out there. I think it's important to make sure we don't make this an us versus them, right? Because
Absolutely.
nobody wins when that happens. And if we're being honest, man, we're dealing with egos. Everybody's got a kind of a chip, and you know, having humility should be a prerequisite.
Hmm.
And it's not. It's not.
Yeah.
And so it's a tough room sometimes to sell. But I think you also did a good job of pointing out the responsibility that we all have a piece of, we all have to own leadership first within how we conduct ourselves,
Yeah. Self-leadership. Yeah.
right? Speak to that for me, if you will, because I think that's an important component that often gets overlooked. Because listen, if I just bitch about my chief or the sheriff, that takes the responsibility off me.
Yeah.
They're the problem. Oh, me? No, I'm not the boss. It's not my responsibility. Bite your tongue, right? Talk to me about that.
Yeah. I wrote the book because I was frustrated. I wrote the book because I was frustrated. I wrote the book because I know fantasies about being famous, about being wealthy, about anything like that. I wrote the book and I poured my heart out because I was frustrated, John. And why I was frustrated is we have all the answers to the problems right inside the profession already. It's not that we don't have the leaders in the profession, it's that we don't identify them properly, we don't ascend them properly, we don't invest in them properly. We have just got it backwards. So that's my frustration from it. So having that lens to do it, it's like writing it and talking about it and wanting to help the profession. It really comes from a place of such deep love and such this frustration that I love it so much. And I think the answers, and a lot of us are like this. We think we have all these answers right in front of us, and we just want somebody to listen to us. And so we have to kind of take the politics out of it. So, what was your question? Because I totally forget what you're asking.
No, so the role, I think that listen, it's something that I'd like to. When I speak, I like to hit people in the face with a 2x4, man.
Yeah, man.
Right, and I think that it's easy for me to point and blame, because when I do that, I'm no longer part of the solution. I think I'm part of the solution. I'm identifying the problem. Motherfucker, what if you're the problem?
Right, right.
Right?
Well,
Like,
what if we're both the problem, which is
what,
probably
right.
more
So
true. Yeah.
like every because leadership, it's multifaceted. It's like any problem you look at. It's never black and white. And
Yeah.
so I would argue that we all play a role, like you and I play a role in the health of our marriage.
Hmm.
We play a role in the health of our police culture.
Oh man,
And
it's the most important role. Yeah,
I would
you're
say we
right.
play a bigger role. I mean, there's arguments to be made on both ends, but I think that if we just take some ownership, right, and
Think
go,
about this. Think about this.
yeah,
So
run with that for me, brother.
yeah, so self leadership. If you want to look at the culture or the health of a sports organization, a business organization, a police department, spend some time with the administration, with the leadership team, with the ownership team, with the management team. Hang out with them, spend time with them, ask them questions, observe them, watch what they do. You only have to do that for a day or two, and you can pretty much have an observation, and you'll be able to make an accurate assessment of where that organization is currently and where they will go. It's very fundamental because the people at the top are making the decisions, and we're human beings. So humans are not perfect.
Right.
Therefore, we're always going to bring an element of dysfunction, of baggage, of unique perspectives. I'm not even saying they're not even bad,
Right.
but if we look at that through that lens, then you understand why things don't work organizationally. So I get back to self leadership. How can somebody, a human being that is a human and flawed by nature, how can they bring multiple failings, multiple points of contention, multiple areas of their life that they're avoiding, Maybe they're dealing with a substance abuse issue. Maybe they made some bad financial investments and they're pretending they didn't do it and they just want to bury their head in the sand. Like all those things you bring to your leadership journey with you, whether we know it or not. That level of shame for our failures, whether professionally and personally, we bring that with us. So when I argue about self-leadership and I write about in the book is we have to advocate for ourselves first and make sure our lives are as great as they can be first before we can consider being promoted. But a lot of us want the goose and the gander. We don't want to deal with the problems because that's too much work. It's too much pain. But we also want the promotion because that brings status and acclaim and earnings to us. I get that, but that's not a successful recipe for sustainability of running a successful organization. You won't do it. You can have some success maybe for a year or two before it blows up, but you won't be able to do it long term.
Right.
So self-leadership, fix yourself, heal yourself, do whatever you can. And it's always a work in progress. I go to therapy. I go every week. I'm not ashamed about it. I do it to maintain and to heal and to talk about it. And every week something comes up that I can make a little pivot, a little adjustment. And I think about it, I'm mindful to it. There's no difference in sports players, professional sports athletes, they're always getting treatment, whether it's mindset, physical treatment, and they're always trying to make adjustments. Like we celebrate people that do it on that side, but on the police side, we're like, what? You're going to therapy? What's wrong with that person?
Yeah.
The
thriving for constant, never-ending self-improvement, right? Like I'm never done. I'm never done learning.
Is that a bad thing or is that a good thing?
Holy smokes, right? Like you're never done. You're never done learning. You're never done growing. You're never done challenging yourself. And you're never done trying to be the best version of yourself, right? Because in doing so, you elevate. What was that quote? A rising tide.
Lifts all ships, right?
I mean, like when you're on point, I mean, everybody in your circle is the beneficiary of that, right? And that organization and that culture is as well.
And what happened to thanking people in our lives that give us really hard information? We don't do that either anymore. Or I don't want to say that. Some of us don't do that anymore. And I struggle with that for years. And now I've only got to a place now. Like this morning, my wife was giving me feedback while she was getting ready for work about my manic episodes, the mania she sees at times. Like last year, I wrote the book in 4 months. I literally had no plan to write a book. I woke up pained about the profession, and in 2 weeks hired a coach, got a publisher, and wrote it in 4 months. Never wanted to write a book and then publish it, and then I almost like didn't want to advertise or market it because I wanted to move on from that to the next project. And she was telling me that this morning, like people, that's not a normal thing, like that you're prone to these moments of mania. And I'm just listening to her, John. I'm listening to her talk. I'm not getting defensive. I'm trying to reflect. I'm trying to be active listener so then I can think about it when she leaves the house. I can think about what that means, how that affects my wife, how that affects my kids.
So wait a minute. Your response was you don't know what the F you're talking about?
No, my response was not that. Exactly. You know what I said?
Old Chad didn't come out.
Exactly.
No.
I said, baby, thank you for sharing all that. That's a lot.
That's
heavy. That's heavy.
Then actually mean it, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's not easy. It takes time and practice. And that's why I think the profession can heal itself so much. We look inward holistically. If we can heal ourselves on an individual level, that whole profession will just change and look so much different.
I think that is the key at all levels. And I think that's the key that we've missed. We find comfort in assessing blame and pointing outwards. It's uncomfortable, man, to look in the mirror and know you're the reason why your life sucks. That's not easy. Fucking pill to swallow, man. Right?
Yeah.
But
or when you realize that you play just when you think, I think this is another thing a lot of people deal with. When you think you weren't as culpable as you were, and then the first moment hits you like, man, I think I contributed. That's on me. Yeah, and I made it seem like it's on them. And I was public about it. Yeah. That we bring that shame. And it's like when you start to peel that back, it makes you pause. It makes you learn. It humbles you very quickly to start, seeking out conversations and seeking out input before speaking and opening your mouth. Yeah.
It's, and I think that's the way the culture of this profession that you and I love so dearly. I think that's how we turn the corner. I think that if we can all acknowledge, right? If we can all acknowledge from road patrol deputy officer all the way to the chief and the sheriff, if we can all acknowledge that we are all instrumental in the role that we play in the culture of this organization, then nobody gets a pass, right? We all
No,
have to earn it every day. David Perez says it, uh, earn your badge every day, right? And
it's a
I
great
think
line.
I
Yeah.
think that that's how we change the culture. Like the culture can't change if we don't change as individuals.
Right.
The
Can't.
individual must change first, right? And so
And seeking these outside solutions to change a culture, it's never good. Like bringing in a training consultant like yourself to put a training class on. That's amazing. But you can't keep spending money on that stuff. Like at some point, you're going to say, all right, well, we spoke to a lot of vendors. We had a lot of people come in and train us. And now it's time that we have to implement all this.
we
We have
have
to
to
do this.
actually we actually
Yeah,
have to do the work of
right.
of changing.
Not every
Um,
6 months bring somebody in so we can tell the borough or the town manager that, hey, we got some training
yeah,
about
what are
leadership
we
development.
doing? What are we
Yeah,
doing about this?
what are the
Yeah,
outcomes? Oh, we still have a lot of personnel complaints. We have internal dialogue. I got a couple officers having affairs. Like when we start to really boil it down, that's the outcome stuff we should be talking about.
right.
Is it always the organizational fault? Of course not. But I think if we start to investigate, ask those questions, we'll find some of the blame, some of the culpability. I don't even want to say blame, like you said, but some of the culpability lies in just how we talk to each other, how we engage with each other, how we support each other.
Now
Man, we
you're
can just make
talking my
these.
language, man. Now you're talking my
Yeah.
language, bro. We
Well, you've been through it, man. You've been through
well,
it.
we demand, right? We demand support from the community, from the city commission, from the mayor, but we won't even have each other's back, man. We won't support each other. Like, how does that dynamic work, right? How about we circle the wagons, right? And we just start caring a little bit more for each other, right? Showing a little bit more compassion, a little bit more understanding. And then, once we get that relationship, intact, once we improve that relationship, have an event for the community, right? But don't have an event for the community until you've taken care of the culture inside the four walls of your agency, right? Like that's
You see,
just
the optics is what we're so concerned about right
yeah,
now, and I
man.
get that. I get that. I get it. We all want to look good. Every one of us wants to look amazing, be treated amazingly, from individuals up to organizations. I get it, and we don't want any shade coming our way. And I think we've just so many police organizations have just compromised the internal stuff and their culture just so we
Right.
can look good. And by the way, we don't look as good as we think we look because we're not as healthy inside. That's the rub. That's the trick that this all is played. If we really want to look as best as we can look to the community, oh my God, let's start inside. Let's dedicate 12 months straight of every day. We're going to transform this culture, and you will see this radiate into the community. Cops will start to volunteer for initiatives and do things just because they're passionate again. They love what they're doing.
Yeah. Um, it's certainly, we didn't get messed up overnight, man. So we're not going to get fixed
Yeah,
overnight.
right.
And
That's
that's a
true.
great start.
Yep.
That's a great start. Hey, listen, I didn't tell you I was going to do this, but I want to do this. All right. I thought it was real. I think it was very impactful to me um, when you included some of your personal journal notes. I know you were like, I was like, no, man. Like we talked about this. I thought this was very impactful. So April 12th, 2020, Easter. You are you're feeling a little down, man. It's Easter, right? You're working. You would not have been working on Easter before. You were a detective. You were out on patrol on midnights on the night shift, and you have this. You stop and you get out. It's Easter, and there's a, a, a scene by the church,
Mhm.
and you have some time, and not a long time, but you have some time out there, and you have a moment, right? You have a moment. Um, Talk to me about that moment because I think that I'm glad you put it at the end because if you put it at the beginning, I probably would have stopped reading the book at that point. Like,
Wow. Wow. Interesting.
so talk to me about that moment, man, because I think for me, it redefines the importance of us being here.
Yeah.
Too much of an
Uh,
ask?
No, 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 not
Okay.
at all. Because that's a memory that, looking back in hindsight, it's funny. Like, at that moment, man, I was broken.
Yeah,
Just
you were.
broken in the sense of service. Like, I wanted to serve, and I thought I was serving, and I thought I was great at serving, and then now my definition of service and my personal understanding of what I believe service to be, and it was all just starting to erode in my mind and change, and I started to become very hopeless, and I'll tell you what happened was that demotion, watching somebody that can have that much control over your life and your schedule and your family, literally that changed a lot of stuff in my personal life as well. That really jarred me, because I realized how much under the thumb anybody are in
Yeah.
the police department, and I didn't think that before. So I share that, because that level of despair, in hindsight, is something that really sat on me. That level of control. So I remember on that Easter, just getting down and praying by the crosses and asking God for direction and guidance, and and um, and I felt like I had this voice wash over me of lead them, when I was praying, looking for a sign. When you want something so bad, you'll hear crickets talk, and you'll think it's Jesus talking to you.
Yeah, right.
But no, I believed it, man. I believe I heard lead them in this faint voice, and I remember asking my wife and talking to her about it, and kind of going back and forth, and that text message exchange on that Easter with her and I, and I almost didn't put that in the book, because it was so personal, and I was so low, and she's building me up and picking me up in that exchange, that it's an embarrassing type of thing as a man, as in, you're a man, so you can relate to, we want to be strong and be all knowing and be in positions to take care of our family. And so that's why I almost didn't put that in there, just the judgment of what that looks like, of a wife having to pick up a man. But
Yeah.
I thought a lot of men need to read about that, because I think it's
I
important.
think listen, my wife has picked me up more times than I care to remember. And I think that that's another thing that you touch. Fuck, man. Who said you have to do this by? It's a team, man. Like
Yeah,
you and
team.
your wife, you're a team. We win or lose together as a team. You and the guys on your squad, we're a team. We win or lose together as a team. Um,
Yeah, you're right, man. Absolutely right about that.
Kristen says anyone can be a dad, but being a good father is a lot of work. It's not an easy job, and it will be the biggest job you'll ever have. And it will always be the one you're the most proud of. One day you'll retire as a cop, but you'll never retire as a father. Oh, Kristen.
Oh,
Right.
man.
Thanks for fucking redefining some things, Kristen.
Wow. Yeah.
One day
Wow.
you'll retire as a cop, but you will never retire as a father.
Damn, that is that's a heck of a line. Wow.
And so I think that's important for our listeners to hear, because so much of who we decide to be revolves around the job. And we've got this beautiful, beautiful opportunity to really be everything that's right for our families. And we squander that, man. We believe it's more important to be a superstar at work than a superstar at home. And she just like fucking says, very so eloquently, you're gonna retire someday, but you're always gonna be a father. And so maybe, right? Maybe just maybe the focus of my life, like maybe being a cop it's a cool job. And maybe it's a means to an end, man. Maybe it's the way that I become an amazing dad, and
Right.
and and not the other way around.
Maybe, yeah, maybe it's the here and the now, but it's not the forever, and we
No,
we
it,
think
it's
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 forever.
it's just
It's like,
something that we do, you
yeah.
know.
Well, the
Um,
interesting thing about that is, 9 months after I wrote there, she said that. I didn't know this at the time, but I retired. So she was right.
right,
Yeah.
yeah. And it's funny, you go back and forth. And you said this, and again, I don't ever, I don't think I ever thought of my family as an accomplishment. But you're right. Um, Last night changed my view, my state of mind. And she's there reassuring you and telling you the important role that you play in that family.
Mm.
And not to minimize it. and not to, and it's just, and it goes on, they're going to have to buy the book to read more words of wisdom by Kristen and Chad. But it was a text of meaning and purpose. It wasn't emoji, talk to you later, a little heart thing bullshit. It was somebody taking the time to really reassure you that you're on the right path, and that there's like almost like, don't get it twisted.
Yeah,
Don't get it
right.
twisted, hon. Like you you need to be a better father than a cop. Like that's, and it sounds so obvious, but I can tell you, and you and I both know the same guys that have gotten it twisted, and
Hmm.
they are wishing, hoping, and praying that they can get back what they lost, right? Because they
Yeah.
didn't make that family a priority. I
Yeah, you're
gotta.
right, man.
Can I wrap with a question, man? Can I wrap with a
Yeah,
question?
yeah.
I could talk to you forever, and I think maybe we'll do a part two, but
This is great. Yeah.
if you have time. But I'd like to wrap with this, if you would. Um, Something for the listener, man. You know, just, it doesn't have to address any one specific topic, but something that you want to tell the guy or gal that's driving in or driving home, and then I'd like to conclude with maybe where we can find you, follow you, and if you got any speaking events coming up, I'd like to put that information out there as well. But before we do all that, bro, just a word to the listener from Chad.
Oh, that's a good one. I think people, the people in our lives. I think it's easy to think that we don't have true allies or real friends, that we're alone in this crazy place. But I think that's an illusion. I don't think that's true. I think every one of us has at least one person in our life that maybe we're not thinking about it because they're so ingrained in us, but there's somebody that is there for us, that answers our calls, is there for our texts. We might dump on them with our BS. We might take advantage of the relationship because we don't realize that we're not adding the same value in return that they're adding to us. So if we can just be a little mindful to those people, and me included. I mean, I have to do that as well, because I'm just, as I'm saying this, I'm like, I got to do this better.
Yeah.
But I think that's the rub. If we can all do better at that, those people that are really going to be there for us when shit hits the fan, and that's going to happen in our life at some point, we can bring more of those true allies into our lives and prepare ourselves for the next storm, because we're mindful now to add value to people in return. So if I need to pick up the phone and call John Kelly, who I never met in person, I can call John Kelly, talk to John for 5 or 10 minutes, feel better about it, say, I love you, brother, and hang up the phone. Why? Because I understand now, I've learned, and I think we all can do a better job of learning how important relationships are. So
Yeah, man.
instead of complaining of, I don't have this, I don't have that person, maybe we do. We just have to be mindful of, and then call them and thank them
Yeah.
and say, you know what, and I need to be a better friend and better person back to you. And I will be, and execute on that.
Just shifting our focus, man. What we have versus what we don't have, right?
And this country is, we've become so material focused, of everyone's out there trying to earn as much money as they can and negotiate the biggest contract, get the newest car, the biggest house. I get it, but this Western philosophy to live in a life has almost destroyed us in some way. And kind of getting back to just the people around us, our neighbors, our community members, our family, people at church. I mean, those are the smiles and the people that, or just the entities in our lives that really mean anything of substance.
Yeah.
You build a pool, you save your whole life, you get a pool. I think about this family, saves your whole life, your whole life. I want a pool, I want a pool, I want a pool. We get an indoor pool or an in-ground pool. It's amazing. 2 summers later, nobody's swimming in that thing. Or as excitement as everybody got, you spent your whole life savings. I'm not saying the pool was a bad idea, and I'm not saying you didn't have a lot of fun with it. I'm just saying, we commit ourselves to these material possessions or wants, and then we get them, and it's like, did it really give us the things that we want when we compromise relationships, or just personal health to get those things. So balance, I think balance is key.
Balance, and maybe make that investment in people, man. That's something you've always been about.
Yep. People, man, they're all around us. They're all smiling. They're helping us. Yeah, they're hurting us too.
Yeah.
They're being unkind as well. Yep, that's true. But they're all around us. There's 8 billion of them on this planet.
Yeah,
the
man.
more we can take care of them, they'll take care of us back.
Yeah, maybe we need another pandemic then to hurt a little bit, bro. Holy smokes. How can we find you, man? What's going on with you? Let's hit me up with some of your social media, and what's the best way for me to connect with you?
Yeah, thank you, man. My social, so I kind of pared down the socials. It was getting too much, bogging me down too much. So I'm just on LinkedIn and Instagram now.
Gotcha.
So if you just search my name, Chad Bruckner, on those, I think it's LinkedIn Chad Bruckner, and same thing for Instagram. My website is motivate-change.com, motivate-change.com. And then my other website for my PI firm, private investigation firm, is intercountyis.com, intercountyis.com. So those are the two websites, socials. Yeah, I would love to just connect with people. As you know, John, I love people. Yep. So if people send me requests, I'm probably going to accept it, engage in a relationship conversation with you. Man.
You got any speaking gigs you want to plug coming up, or anything locally?
I do have some later this year. I'm actually speaking at the Wounded Blue this year, which is
nice.
Pretty amazing. Yeah, I just got the email last week.
Congratulations, bro. That's awesome.
Thank you. I submitted a proposal to them, and just last week, Jenny Hill sent me an email and let me know I'll be speaking. So
nice.
Travis Howes will be there. Dave Grossman will be there. And my little name is at the very bottom. And I'm like, man, that's awesome. So that's
man,
good.
Put it on top, bro. Put it on top. Congratulations. Good, that's awesome, bro.
Yeah, thank you. So that'll be in Las Vegas. What's that, September, October this year?
I think so. Yeah, man.
That'll be the first big conference I'll be at. I've spoken at some other conferences, but I'm excited about this one, man.
Congratulations, man.
I'll
be sure to put all that information in the show notes. Ladies and gentlemen, Chad Bruckner, the book is The Holy Trinity of Successful and Healthy Police Organizations, Improving Leadership, Culture, and Wellness. I just love sitting down with you, man. Thank you for your time. And
let's do part two.
I hope to do a part two, and I hope to see you in the not too distant future, Chad.
We definitely will, brother. Thank you, man. I appreciate it, Mayon. You're doing amazing things, man. Keep it up.
Thanks, man. And that is that, brother. Woo.
That was awesome.